Hi everyone, and thanks for joining us today for our webinar, the Google Display Network, how, when, and why to use it. Today's agenda will be discussing the display advertising landscape. We'll be going over the role of display advertising in the purchase cycle, and then we'll also be talking about a case study of how WordStream uses remarketing on the Google Display Network. If you'd like to include the conversations that we have today in our presentation, you can include the hashtag #GDNwebinar in your Google Plus statuses, updates, Twitters, tweets, etc. And we can follow those and get your responses. So to introduce our speakers for today, from WordStream, we have Larry Kim. Larry's the founder and CTO of WordStream. He's been doing PPC and SEO for over 10 years. And WordStream is currently the industry-leading provider of PPC management software. Our next speaker is Sher. Sher is a strategic partner manager from Google. Let's hand things over to Sher, and we'll get started with the webinar.
Hi everybody. My name is Sher. I'm a strategic partner manager for Google. I'm based in New York. I work with partners along the East Coast, and I've been with Google for almost 5 years now. And this is the second time I've been asked to join a webinar with WordStream. So happy to be back here. Thanks, Larry, for the invite. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about the display landscape, the role that display plays in the purchase cycle, and then we've got a case study from Larry to follow that up at the moment, and I'm going to dive right in. I'm going to start with what the display landscape is. And essentially it's the Google display landscape where the Google Display Network, where the reach is unmatched. It's a 92% reach across millions and millions of sites, videos, and devices. The highest reach across the net in the US, and it delivers relevant ads across multiple sites and networks, reaching customers when they're ready to buy. As the slide shows, the display network consists of sites in the AdSense publisher network, the DoubleClick ad exchange, and other Google properties. And some of the sites can be seen displayed on the screen, such as CNN.com, and all Google properties such as YouTube and Gmail. But worth noting as well is that there's a lot of traffic on smaller sites, niche sites that you might never have heard of before that you may want to target for specific reasons. With remarketing, you're also going to want frequency, and one of the key targeting options that we're going to discuss today is remarketing, and we'll show you why frequency is important for that as well. The Google Display does reach 84% of typical remarketing audiences in a month, and it can reach them between 10 and 18 days or more of any given month, and we'll get to details of that later on. You want to reach customers on a wide variety of sites and pages as well. Make sure you have a diversity in there, and leveraging the powerful algorithm that continually scans sites on every page in the web in the Google Display Network. Contextual targeting can be used with remarketing, for example, to maximize the relevance of your messages, increasing response rates. So, I'm just going to go back because we've skipped a couple of slides. Sorry about that, guys. So the display network is, as I've said, the biggest in terms of reach, 92%. And what we try and do there is we try and get the right person to give the right message to the right person at the right time. And obviously, there's a lot of different targeting options that can be employed to achieve that, and they all depend upon what you're trying to achieve as a marketer. And there's a model that we're going to dive into later on today to show you how you can match your message to the right person at the right time. It's a model we call the purchase funnel, and I'm going to show you guys how I think you should match specific targeting options to specific phases of the purchase cycle. Just before we get there. The pie chart here nicely highlights why the display network should be important to every marketer. Customers consider, evaluate, and advocate online, where 95% of their time is spent on content, where the Google Display Network ads can reach them. Only 5% is spent on search. In fact, we at Google, we think this is a very good stat because the less time people spend on search implies the faster they're finding what they're looking for. So what do people do for the other 95% of the time that they're online? They read news, sports, blogs, emails, research, social networks, you name it. Just think of your own behavior. I know I don't spend all my time on Google search. I'm sure most people don't. And what we need to, what you as a marketer needs to do is you need to try and figure out how to take advantage of the targeting options that the display network has to make sure that you reach your target audience when they're not in search, but when they're at other stages of their surfing time. And I'm going to move right into the role of the display purchase cycle, where hopefully you can now see the model. On the left-hand side is the customer purchase funnel. And the model can be used to illustrate the different targeting options, as I said, where on the right-hand side you'll see the Google Display Network features that correspond to the different stages of the purchase funnel. So we're going to go into detail for every single phase of the funnel, so I'm not going to review all of them in detail now. But the idea behind it is that every single phase of the funnel, awareness, interest, consideration, and purchase, requires a different type of targeting method to be used. The better you match the targeting methods for the specific phases of the funnel, the more likely your advertising and your marketing efforts are going to pay off and have a higher ROI and performance. Having said that, there's no one specific targeting option that only works within one specific phase. The lines are blurry here as well, and we'll see that as well, as for example, remarketing can be used in the consideration phase as well as the purchase phase. However, there are recommendations, and those are the ones we're going to go into today. Looking at each phase of the funnel individually, awareness is the first phase. Do people in your target audience recognize that you advertised online recently? Are they aware that you even exist? The Google Display Network offers multiple solutions to ensure users are aware of your existence. And going on to the next slide, I'll show you how this can be done. Keyword contextual targeting is one of the oldest and one of the most widely adopted methods of targeting in the display network. And so how can I create awareness using keyword category targeting? Keyword contextual targeting, sorry. Knowing what someone is reading about is at this moment is a strong indicator of their intent. Similar to how a search query can tell us a lot about what a person may be interested in. Contextual targeting is powerful because it gives you an opportunity to speak to your audience during this highly valuable window of time, and to do that at scale. Together, not only can you reach the right person, but also at the right time. And together with that, you can create the right creative or ad message. And we can then begin to achieve the goal of the perfect ad for everyone. As many of you know, contextual advertising basically means showing a user an ad that's contextually related to the type of content they're viewing, as you'll see in an example here. You're advertising green cleaning solutions, a highly relevant product for this reader. Our technology matches your ad based on the keywords on the page. A relevant ad is served precisely as the user is reading the page, and it gives you the opportunity to speak to your audience at the exact moment they're reading or thinking about content related to your product or service. Timing makes a big difference, and this type of advertising creates awareness. The second phase of the funnel is interest. This refers to targeting customers when they're evaluating. Do people associate your brand with its value proposition? As you move to the second phase, we're talking about how to combine audience and contextual signals to reach the right customer at the right moment with the right message. And some of the different ways we can do that are through topic targeting, placement targeting, interest-based targeting, and demographic targeting. I'm going to start by discussing placement targeting. Placement targeting lets you put your message where you think it's the best match for your business. You can show your ad on specific web pages, online videos, games, RSS feeds, and mobile sites that you select. Machine The machine, so our technology, learns and understands the meaning of a page, and the relevant ad is served precisely as the user reads that page. There's two types of placements. There's managed placements, where you can hand-pick sites which you want your ads to appear on. And there's automatic placements, where imagine you're an SMB with a local online store selling fishing gear. How useful would it be for you to make sure that your ad appears on fishing blogs and content that relates to fishing? You may not know each of these fishing blogs and fishing sites by heart because the net is big and you may have not come across them. Automatic placements will allow you to find those. Next type of targeting I'm going to walk you through is demographic targeting. Demographic targeting is part of audience solutions on the Google Display Network. And demographic targeting on the Google Display Network lets you show ads to users based on their age and gender. You can extend your brand reach within a demographic, customize creative for various demographic groups, exclude certain groups from campaigns that aren't even relevant to them, and even combine age and gender with other audience targeting tools such as remarketing to reach your best prospects. For example, imagine you're selling anti-aging products for women. You have the ability to only target women above a certain age. Or imagine you're selling mobile phone accessories. How powerful would it be for you to be able to target people in the age group of 18 to 24? You can target bidding and add copy for each of these specific categories and exclude categories you find less relevant, therefore making sure your ad appears to people for whom it's relevant. Just like your business caters to customers, your customers may be interested in certain topics. Topic targeting lets you place your AdWords ads on website pages about those topics, whether it's shopping or cars or something entirely different. There's over 1,700 topics or subtopics that we have already predefined that you can choose from. For instance, you may wish to advertise golfing sports gear. You could choose our sports subcategory from a list, and that will then bring you to a subcategory called sports golf. You may even target topics together with placements, such as golfing gear on the NewYorkTimes.com. Again, combining different targeting methods to make sure you reach the users that you want to reach. Another type of targeting option we have is interest categories. Similar, a user's prior web browsing history gives valuable insights about their interests, and thus allowing you to reach them on many sites across the web. Interest categories work like this. Our system looks at the different types of pages a user visits, taking into account how recently and how frequently those pages have been visited, and then associates their browser behavior with relevant interest categories. Using these categories, you can show ads to the people most likely to purchase your products or services, and you can reach them across all types of sites in the Google Display Network, in addition to contextually relevant sites. With 1,600 interest categories, from ecotourism to mobile phones, we're confident you'll find a category that fits your business. And with over 500 million users interested in these categories who visit the Display Network every day, you'll be able to reach a huge number of potential customers. This solution is for advertisers large and small. It doesn't matter what size your business is. And we can help you try and find the right person at the right time through these types of targeting methods. Drawing you guys back to the purchase funnel. We're now in the third stage of the purchase funnel called consideration stage. This is just before the purchase stage, where users are already familiar with what they're looking for, but still considering other options. Comparison shopping, such as switching back and forth between sites. Some of the most powerful products recommended at this stage of the funnel are remarketing, or audience-based, or interest-based targeting. In particular, remarketing is one of the most performance-oriented products within the Display Network, often displaying ROI similar to that of search, as the case study from Larry will later reveal. For those unfamiliar with remarketing, I'll briefly elaborate here. In a nutshell, remarketing allows you to target users that have already been to your site. This is unbelievably powerful, as you have the ability to target users that have already indicated interest in your product or service. For instance, a user looking to purchase a new laptop will typically visit several sites prior to purchase. While switching between sites, the user will compare prices and features of laptops and sooner or later make a purchase decision. With remarketing, you have the ability to target this user during the decision-making process by showing them ads on a product they have already seen from a site they have already visited. Therefore, the chance the user will recognize your ads is extremely high. The technology behind the process involved is called cookies, where the user is targeted again while he spends time surfing through the display network. Given the 92% reach that I alluded to at the beginning of the webinar, the display network is very likely to be able to find the user again at a later stage in the purchasing cycle. And in fact, we'll believe there's an 84% chance of that happening. Other targeting options relevant at this stage also include interest category and demographic targeting, as it will also allow you to target the user during the consideration stage. Again, a very good way to target users who already have an idea of what they're looking for, but are still considering the exact product and from who to purchase it. Using these technologies in the display network, you'll be able to target a very specific and valuable group of users for which you can adjust bidding and add copy messaging accordingly, meaning higher bids as they may be worth more and very specific targeting. Remarketing allows us to add value into sunk costs. A great way to drive users for whom you have already paid to visit your site and get them back to convert or even for repeat business. When users visit your website, they are all at different stages of the purchase funnel, and they may leave your site for many different reasons. The great thing about remarketing is that it does not matter at which stage of the purchase funnel the user is, be it awareness or interest or consideration, because you can bring them back to your site with the right ads and make sure that they will consider you in the consideration phase and hopefully purchase from you in the purchase phase. In 2010, Forrester published a study indicating that 96% of people who visit a website leave without converting. And this does make sense if you think about your own search behavior. You often shop around and see what else is out there. But if you think about it, each site has a very specific objective designed by a marketer. Moreover, 70% of people abandon their shopping cart without completing a purchase. Again, this resonates when you think about your own shopping behavior. And you're most certainly going to shop around when purchasing for more expensive goods and services, such as laptops or flights. But what does that mean? Well, it means that only 4% of visitors convert on their first visit to any given site. Now, thinking about that for a couple of seconds. You're paying for traffic, and only 4% of that is likely to convert on the first visit. And this is because users are at different stages of the purchase funnel. And 70% of them have already demonstrated the specific intent and are therefore very valuable to that specific marketer. An effective remarketing strategy targets all stages of the funnel and is especially useful for lower funnel goals. And this is why. Higher funnel goals include brand awareness. Remarketing can drive brand awareness through tailored creatives as well. Mid-funnel goals, integrating display into your campaigns. And you will already have paid to get advertisers to your site, and employing remarketing will significantly increase the chances of you converting them and bringing them back to your site and recuperating some costs. Lower funnel goals is when users are already almost ready to purchase. They've narrowed down their selection to very few. And addressing those 70% of users who abandon shopping carts will give you the highest opportunity, the biggest opportunity for a high ROI. Remarketing reaches your customers with the right message when they are ready to buy. Use an optimal mix of audience intelligence, coupled with Google's superior reach, frequency, and pricing to make the most of your search advertising spend. The fact is that 70% of online shoppers who have abandoned their cart have not completed their purchase, and you can create an ongoing relationship with these customers and achieve maximum return to your search investment through remarketing. Keep them engaged by reminding them of their interest in your product through ads tailored to them. This slide is here to tie together the value of the display network and remarketing. Remarketing is only valuable if you have the reach. Imagine you have 10,000 unique visitors on your site in 1 month, and you could find 84% of these across the display network through remarketing. The impact could be huge. You can also reach these users frequently, 10 to 18 days per month on average, and across various pages, as users visit 20 pages in the display network on a typical day. 5 to 10 sites could display your ads. As you can see, the display network is truly well positioned for effective remarketing strategies due to its impressive reach. Now that we've covered reach, does that have an impact on performance? Well, yes. From our 2010 study, the typical account gets a 28% lower CPA, 51% higher conversion rate, and a 52% higher CTR on remarketing compared to the rest of display. Why is that? Because within remarketing, you're targeting the lower end of the purchase funnel, and you're tying in a lot of loose ends that your search spend may have already opened up. The final stage of the purchase cycle is called purchase, and this is where the deal is sealed and conversions are made. Search is the strongest signal of intent. Shopping carts are also very strong signals of intent. And you will see we have kept remarketing in this part of the strategy as well, in this part of the funnel as well. As already mentioned, it is very widely used, and it is has one of the most highest ROI in terms of performance measurements for all our display targeting options. One of the strongest indicators of intent is the shopping cart dropout. And imagine you own a consumer electronics store, a consumer electronics online store, and you have the opportunity to target with specifically tailored ads all users who have dropped out of the shopping cart. In theory, you could create ads with the exact product that they were on their way to purchase, and you could find them at later stage of their purchasing cycle in the display network. You could even offer them dropout. You can even offer the dropout users a discount for changing their mind if you wanted to. Studies have shown that this can drive conversions up by 51%, which is not surprising. One caveat I'd like to mention at this point about remarketing is that you have to be cautious as to how aggressive you set your targeting options. Whilst it makes sense for users who are still in the decision-making process to see ads for the flat screen that they almost bought before dropping out of the shopping cart, you don't want to attack them and overwhelm them and give them a feeling that they're being followed around the net. For this purpose, I definitely recommend that you utilize frequency capping to ensure that there's a maximum number of impressions you allow per unique user per day. Furthermore, iProspect and ComScore found that when combining search and display, this bumps up the likelihood to purchase by 7 percentage points. Again, a way to recuperate some of the costs you've invested in search. And with that, that concludes the theoretical part of the webinar today, where we've discussed a bunch of different targeting options within the display network and remarketing in a little more detail. And I'd like to hand the mic back to Larry.
Awesome. Thanks, Sher. I think that was a really comprehensive overview of the Google Display Network, and I thank you for that. So in my part of the presentation today, I thought I would just focus more on sort of the why and the how. So why should advertisers invest in Google Display Network, and how should you go about doing it? And so, of course, the best way to do this is via a real-world case study, and not just any case study today. In my presentation, I'm going to be describing to you exactly how I personally use the Google Display Network, as well as remarketing to grow my business. At WordStream, one of our core values here is transparency. And so What this means is we're really open about our experiences, both good and bad, in terms of the advertising and best practices. It means I would never recommend using something that I myself wouldn't be willing to invest my own time and advertising dollars in. And so today I'm going to describe in detail a little bit my experiences in using the Google Display Network. I'm going to describe to you my advertising goals, my strategies, the processes that I used for optimizing our campaigns, and of course what you're really interested in is what results did we achieve from having done this marketing effort. So let's first start with a little bit about my business, WordStream, in terms of, at least in terms of what are the key marketing objectives that we have here. So WordStream is a provider of PPC management software, and like most other businesses, I rely on various traffic generation activities to, like on the web, such as PPC, blogging, social media, email marketing, etc., in order to get people to the website. The primary goal of our marketing efforts is lead generation. So we don't sell products online, and there's no online shop. When people hit our website, the primary objective is to get their contact information and turn that into our lead so that we can talk to them. And so that's very similar to most businesses, actually. And so, on our site, you'll find that we've got a lot of different offers, like free white papers and free trials. We even have this free tool called the AdWords Grader, which is, it's kind of like getting a free credit report score for your AdWords account. But the point is, all of these different offers and tools, they all sort of rely on driving traffic to the site. And so when I look at my website funnel, one thing that I notice in terms of one of the key challenges is the fact that our conversion rate from website visitors to sort of a completed sign-up, it's typically in the mid-single digits. And so that's not just a WordStream challenge. It's most websites, as Sher was saying in his part of the presentation, have conversion rates around 4 or 5%, and that represents a lot of kind of lost opportunity. And so, a key challenge here would be to try to harness some of this intent and try to turn some of this lost opportunity into completed leads. So as I was making the business case for investing advertising dollars on the Google Display Network, I found that there were several other signs that led me to believe that my company could potentially benefit from advertising on the display network. For example, I had noticed that my website had somewhat poor engagement metrics. What I mean by this is that I found that every month we'd get a ton of website visitors, but very few of them would ever come back. And what I mean by this is that roughly 20% of the visitors would come back, whereas 80% would just go away and never to be heard again from. And so I had two goals here for remarketing on the Google Display Network, meaning like remarketing meaning the process of using display ads specifically to people who've already expressed interest in WordStream. So I have two objectives for this campaign. One is, could I improve the overall website conversion rates by targeting the abandoners and turning them into leads? And two, could I improve our engagement metrics, such as these repeat visitor rates, and intuitively, it seemed all quite logical, and so we decided to try it out, and I'm going to explain to you what I did here. So a key first step in your setting up your Google Display Network campaigns that use remarketing is how you go about defining your audience. An audience are the people that I want to see my display ads as they go about surfing around the internet. And so I had set up various audiences, including anyone who visited the WordStream website, anyone who visited the WordStream blog, anyone who visited my free tools page, like the AdWords Grader, anyone who signed up for our PPC management software, a free trial. The reason why I went about segmenting audiences in this fashion has to do with the fact that I want to be able to target different messages to different audiences. So, for example, if someone visited my AdWords Grader page, then I want to send them a specific ad message about grading your AdWords account. Another reason to do this kind of audience segmentation has to do with bid optimization, meaning the people who visited my main offer pages, such as the AdWords Grader or the PPC Management Trial, these people are much more qualified prospects in comparison to someone who, say, just happened to read an article on one of my blog articles. And so, just to give you an example, a couple months ago I wrote an article about the U.S. Presidential election that got 5,000 visitors in like a couple hours. But I bet most of those people weren't actually in the market for PPC management software. And so, as you can see, it doesn't make a lot of sense for me to bid super aggressively for that, like kind of just generic blog traffic. Whereas on the other hand, people who've, visited the blog and, visited one of my free tools, such as the AdWords Grader or PPC management platform product, these people are far more qualified. And so they've expressed some additional interest in learning more about those offers. And so I can more aggressively target those people. Another thing that comes up in audience definition is the notion of frequency capping and membership duration. Membership duration has to do with how long do you want to keep people in these audiences for. So initially, I was thinking we should set the membership duration to be forever. So like I was thinking with my kind of spammy marketer hat on, I was thinking this is great. I can follow these people around the internet forever. But actually that turned out to be not such a great idea. You see, because people's interest in your company or your products, it tends to kind of decay over time. And so just give you an example. Say you're doing car shopping and you're a car dealer. Maybe it doesn't make sense to target that visitor to your car dealer site, say more than 2 months, because after that they've probably already bought a car, and so the opportunity to make a sale might not be there anymore. And so it's typical, like something like this in all businesses. And so we ended up setting our membership duration to between 30 and 60 days, as you can see on the screenshot here. And that's because we know from our own research, our own internal research, that we typically sell to companies within the first 2 months from the time they first visited us on our website. And so why bother chasing them after that time has elapsed? Similarly, on the topic of frequency capping, in terms of limiting the number of times we show ads, our ads to any member of our audiences, again, the spammy marketer in me thought maybe we should be very aggressive and relentlessly target these visitors, have no impression caps. But we later found that wasn't a great strategy, and so we later lowered the frequency cap to just 30 impressions, and meaning after you've seen one of our ads 30 times, I'm going to stop hounding you, and the reason has to do with kind of optimizing for performance of the campaign. If someone's seen your ad 100 times, 1,000 times, and they still haven't clicked on it, they might not just be that into you. And additionally, it's also nice to cap impressions, just again, as Sher said, so that you're not perceived as like following them around as a crazy stalker on the internet. So having created those audiences, the next step is to create different ads that target the different interests that I've segmented in my audiences. So for example, people who visited my AdWords Grader tool page but didn't necessarily finish the process of signing up, I matched that audience with a specific targeted AdWords Grader ads. See how your campaigns measure up. Get 40 hours of PPC analysis in just 60 seconds. Another thing I'd like to point out about display advertising, if you're new to display, there's a lot of creative things that you can do in your image ads that you just can't do in text ads. So remember how I was saying earlier, one of my hopes is to increase sort of repeat visits and stuff like that. And so that means I'm trying to influence kind of branding. And so as you can see in these ads, not only is there a nice call to action, which is designed to sort of increase the the conversion rates of leads, but there was that secondary goal of trying to increase kind of brand awareness and repeat visitor rate. And so you can see how I've been able to include some branding in terms of the logo and the company name in this valuable ad real estate. And finally, it's really important that you create a portfolio of different ads in all of the various sizes that are supported in the Google Display Networks. For example, leaderboard, skyscraper, square, etc. So now that I've kind of described how I've set up my remarketing campaigns in terms of the audience and the ads for the Google Display Network remarketing campaigns, let's talk about the results. How did they end up doing? So for starters, I'm getting a ton of impressions. So right now I'm getting roughly 20 million ad impressions every month, and that's a lot of eyeballs. Like if you can think about like how many page views or how many emails you'd have to send out to get 20 million impressions, this is quite a lot of impressions. So it's a very vast network, as Sher was saying earlier. Secondly, the click-through rate is just under 0.2%. Now, that may seem small from a search perspective, but that's a very high click-through rate compared to the average internet banner ad. And so it's at least 2 to 3 times higher than the typical click-through rate that you see on generic banner ads. It's anywhere from 5 to 10 times higher than the typical click-through rate that you'll see on Facebook. Why? It's because, again, we're targeting people who had already visited my website. And so they're not just anyone. They've already expressed a prior interest in one of my offerings. And so in terms of lead generation, I was amazed to see that the leads that I got through these remarketing efforts were slightly less cost than the average cost per lead that we pay for in our Google search campaigns. And again, this has a lot to do with the fact that we're just targeting like the low-hanging fruit here in our audience definitions. We're being very selective. We're capping frequencies and membership durations, and we're bidding more aggressively for the most targeted audience segmentations, and less for the more generic audiences. And so I'd experimented with this and some other targeting options on the Google Display Network, such as the managed placements. That's where you specify the various websites that you're interested in, as well as interest categories where you specify the different interests. But I was not able to get the cost per conversion as low as when I used remarketing. And I think this is just obvious. It's because there are people who really had the interest in your product offerings and already checked you out. So just a couple other data points I'd like to share here today with you. Remember at the beginning I was saying that I was concerned about sort of the user engagement metrics, that only around 20% of my website visitors were repeat visitors. Well, I just took a look at that repeat visitor metric a few weeks ago and saw that it was now nearly at 29%. And so, of course, you can't all attribute this to one remarketing campaign effort, because we do other forms of marketing here, like blogging, like email marketing, like webinars today, as you know. But the trend is positive, and I strongly believe that the remarketing campaigns on the Google Display Network has had some helpful impact here. It's just very difficult to quantify. Another thing I wanted to share is that WordStream allocates roughly half of, just under half, 40% of our PPC budget today on remarketing for campaigns on the Google Display Network. Now, I realize that's pretty high. I work with a ton of advertisers. Typically, we see the split more like 80-20 in terms of like search display, but obviously. I don't think you should go all in with remarketing. I don't think it makes sense to have like 100% strategy on remarketing, because that means you're only targeting people who've already visited you in the past, and that might be effective, but it doesn't mean that you should stop going after people who haven't heard of you yet. And so you need to have a balance here. But because of all the metrics in terms of ROI and stuff like this, that's the balance that we have set right now. In addition to the cost per lead and the lead generation goals that we had, there was also that goal around driving brand recognition. Now, brand recall is impossibly difficult to measure, compared to some of the more quantitative benchmarks in paid search, like conversions and cost per click and cost per conversion. But nevertheless, I have a couple observations to share here. The first has to do with branded organic searches, meaning if more people recall my brand, WordStream, then you would argue that on average more people ought to be doing organic searches on WordStream on Google. And so the blue line on this chart just shows the number of people searching for my company name, WordStream, in Google, and then clicking on the first organic listing. And the green line shows sort of the ramp up of ad impressions on the Google Display Network per day. And we just saw that there was a slight uptick in branded searches as we ramped up the Google Display Network campaigns. And so, it's nothing super conclusive, but it was at least tracking positively. And in addition to this data, I just have two more quick little success stories to share, if you can call them that. One of them has to do with earlier this year. There was this guy that we were trying to hire, like we were trying to recruit an employee for a job at WordStream, and he had actually multiple offers from competing companies, like other vendors, and we were really trying hard to get him to join us. And later, thankfully, he accepted our job offer, and I asked him sort of what was the reason why he chose us over other companies that he was considering. And of course, there was a couple of reasons, but one of the reasons that he actually said was that he saw our ads appearing everywhere on the web, and he was really impressed by that. Meaning, so as he was researching WordStream, looking up old reviews and old articles, the Google Display Network was just doing its job, following the guy around and reminding him about WordStream. So that's quite a nice assist there. And one last story I have here is if you do Google Display Network advertising with remarketing, I can almost guarantee that you'll hear from your friends and colleagues and family with funny things like, "Hey, I saw your ad on CNN," and of course I think that's really funny because they think it's probably really hard to do this, whereas it's actually not necessarily that difficult. So I don't tell them that, of course. I just say, "Yeah, of course, we're awesome." I'm just kidding, of course. But in summary, as I said earlier, I would never recommend something to my clients or prospects in terms of spending money on things that I'm not willing to invest my own marketing dollars in myself and try out. And so to that end, I wanted to share with you exactly how I use the Google Display Network and remarketing. What's the benefit? What's our strategy? What's the ROI? What's the results? There you have it. In terms of the last year, we've had a pretty fun opportunity to experiment with a great deal of Google Display Network options, trying out targeting options. I was really impressed with the Google the ROI from the Google Display Network advertising using remarketing, because as I showed today, we were able to accomplish various goals, including driving leads at a slightly lower CPA than our search campaigns, while also simultaneously impacting brand recall, which is a very important secondary goal for some of our marketing campaigns. If you're already doing paid search, I kind of think it's hard to imagine a scenario where you wouldn't want at least some of your advertising budget, allocated to display advertising using remarketing or some of these other targeting options. I know it's definitely a little bit of work, but I think that it would be worth the effort. Finally, here's a quick checklist that kind of summarizes what we went over today in terms of how to practically get started with remarketing on the Google Display Network. Step one is to install that remarketing code on your website. There's a single code that you get in AdWords, and you can just install that code on your website footer. Step two is define the strategies based on your specific marketing objectives. And as I said earlier, in audience definition, the key is to segment your audience based on different interests or different value to to you as the advertiser. This way you can apply different messages to different interests as well as different bid strategies to higher or lower value audiences depending on their value to your business. We also talked about frequency capping and membership duration settings to make sure that the audience is always fresh. Step 3 was to create the ads, both display and text ads in all sorts of different sizes. Step 4 was to adjust the bids, finding the right mix of quantity and price that makes the most sense for your business. And of course, step 5 is to just continuously optimize. So at this point, I just have one last poll question. Chris, is this poll available?
Yep, all set.
Great. So the question is, are you interested in getting some help with remarketing? And I think that it's a really fantastic way to do marketing, and we'd be glad to assist. And while people are locking in their votes here, Chris, should we head over to questions?
Sure. Thanks, Larry, and thanks, Sher, for sharing the insights today. We'll get into the Q&A portion of the presentation. I just want to note that we have some people on the call today that actually, it's kind of funny. They said they registered for the event through our remarketing of the webinar. So it's just kind of funny. It kind of goes to show you how how effective remarketing can actually be. So the first question we have here is, what are the first steps I should take to set up my remarketing campaigns?
Sher, you want to take that one?
Sure. So that's a good question. How to start? So the first thing before you set up any campaign needs to be to kind of think of what's the objective behind the campaign. What am I trying to achieve? And as Larry very nicely illustrated in his case study, there's no one remarketing campaign that's going to hit all objectives. You need to sit down and you need to think about, am I trying to pick up shopping cart dropouts? Am I trying to target everybody who visits my site? Am I trying to target one of the most lucrative products or services that I'm selling? Once you've figured out which of these you're trying to target, and if you're trying to target all of them, then you need to have separate campaigns for all of these specific objectives. Then you need to spend a couple of minutes implementing pixel code on one of your sites. Any webmaster would be able to do that within a couple of minutes. That's really not complicated. After that, you would then sit down and you'd come up with creatives, ad creatives, and you'd have to think about the messaging. So what does this user who's already been to my site know about me, and what am I trying to offer him or sell him? And ideally, if you're, say, targeting somebody who's dropped out of the shopping cart, you'd be able to find out, what products he was interested in, which products had he added to the shopping cart, generate creatives that match those products, and then you could think about, do you want to offer them some sort of discount? Do you want to offer them some sort of loyalty scheme? How do you want to entice them back to your site? And then you need to think about your bidding strategy. How important is it for you to get these people back to your site? What's it worth? What's it worth it for you? And last but not least, as I and Larry mentioned as well, is you should think about frequency capping. How often do you want this user to see your impressions? Because it's always good to make sure to remind people of something more than once, but you don't want to be giving them the feeling that you're following them around with a certain product offering.
Great, thank you, Sher. Larry, I had a question for you here. What advice do you have for helping figuring out what percentage of ad spend budget should go to search versus display advertising?
Well, it depends on your budget and your objectives. So in my case study today, WordStream actually allocated a decent amount of our search spend to remarketing because we have other kind of traffic generation activities going on. So because we have a pretty active blog and we do these webinars all the time, like there's a decent amount of traffic coming in already, and so I was kind of more concerned about converting the traffic that we have necessarily than driving new traffic. But if that's not the case, if you don't have a lot of traffic to remarket to, then obviously you should be spending a lot more of your investment on paid search, on the search marketing aspect to drive to drive new visitors. So it's a bit about it depends on your business in terms of like kind of what the mix of the existing marketing objectives. It also depends on your budget. So for example, if your budget is like $500 a month, and there's a bit of overhead in setting up all these image ads and things that perhaps it might, if you're spending below a certain threshold, it might not make sense to build out all these ads and strategies if it's such a small budget. So I guess it just depends on the size of your budget and sort of the objectives and your marketing mix.
Great. We're getting a lot of questions about impression levels. So the question I have here is, what is the recommended level to cap impressions per user?
So that's a difficult question to answer because it will depend on the messaging. But generally speaking, Larry mentioned, I think, 30 impressions per day. I used to run an SMB outside of Google, and I used to obviously do the online marketing for them. It was a very niche-orientated SMB, so people wouldn't really find the sites unless they wanted to go there. And I used to have a cap of I think it was 12 or 15 a day. Again, that doesn't mean that that's the Google recommended cap that everybody should always have. That was just what worked for me, because I felt that 10 or 12 impressions a day, that means that the user will have definitely noticed the ads on the sites that he's been on and either taken an action or not. And those remarketing campaigns that I ran for my SMB were actually almost as successful as the search campaigns in terms of ROI. So for me, that worked well. But again, that's not something that everybody needs to adhere to. That's just, I suppose, one scenario where it worked well. I would say definitely set a cap and just think about how sensitive the topic is you're trying to market. If you're trying to market Christmas presents or Valentine's Day presents, you might have a more generous cap. If you're trying to market something that could be relatively sensitive, that somebody browsing the internet might not want other people to know that they're browsing on, you might want to reduce that cap by a bit.
Great. We have a question here about the purchasing stage and using display advertising in the purchasing stage. From both, Sher and Larry, your experiences, do you see the B2B markets to be more effective or retail when it comes to remarketing?
That's a good question. I don't actually have any experience on that. I think Larry might be able to better answer that. Yeah, sure, go ahead.
I have some data. Like some of the best converting industries in our data is actually travel, the travel industry and the automotive industry. So like they have like really great conversion rates, very low cost per conversion, especially compared to comparable performance on search. I think a lot of that has to do with maybe if you're trying to sell a vacation package or maybe a brand new car, maybe these image ads are a little bit more compelling in terms of like making you want to be on vacation or make you want to buy that car than maybe a text ad it does on Google. Sher, I'm sorry I interrupted. Do you have any thoughts to add to that?
No, I mean that's it's hard to argue with empirical evidence, but I would just say it probably also depends on the time of year. So taking retail as the example, if you're selling Christmas presents during the Christmas period, so October, November, December, you're going to want to be present on all sorts of different marketing mediums, including the display network, because you're going to have to be competing with advertisers who are going to be very aggressively trying to entice users from the awareness to the interest to the consideration down to the purchase stages of the funnel. And if you only advertise at the purchase funnel, at the purchase stage of the funnel, you're probably going to miss out on a lot of business because people aren't ever going to get to you. So employing display or remarketing, or remarketing, I should say, is definitely a good use case. And as I mentioned in the research from iProspect and ComScore as well, they were able to show a 77% percentage point increase in the likelihood of a purchase when combining search and display together.
Great, thank you. I think that's all the time we have today for questions. If we didn't get to your questions in today's presentation, we'll try to get to as many of these as we can, either through a blog post or an email blast later this week. We'll also be sending out a follow-up email tomorrow morning with a link to the slides and the video presentation. So if anyone wants to watch it on demand or look over the materials again, you can. If you want to learn more about WordStream services, you can visit www.wordstream.com/remarketing-services. And we also have the phone number up on this screen now as well if you want to give us a call, and we can help you get started with remarketing. And I also included Larry's information up here, so if you have any questions for Larry, you can feel free to contact him directly. I want to thank everyone again for joining us today in today's presentation, and have a great day.